It's official. Lamont Butler will be the starting point guard for the Kentucky Wildcats this season, and I think we need to have more confidence in Butler as PG1.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing Lamont Butler getting the keys to the car that is the Kentucky offense. I think we need to have more confidence in Butler as a playmaker and overall as a very solid piece in Kentucky's backcourt. Also on today's episode, is Jackson Robinson the best shooting guard in all of college basketball? Well, one outlet certainly thinks so. Could he be even bigger than we expect for the Wildcats this year? Also, to wrap up the show, we've got a new segment here called Nightly Numbers. It's the show within the show that takes a look at one interesting statistic about the Kentucky Wildcats. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more, and as playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So you can visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. I feel extremely confident with Lamont Butler running this Kentucky offense. Now, in case you did not see, and some of you in the comments still want to try and combat this news, unfortunately, it's been reported, it's official, it's happening. There's nothing that any of us can do about it. And frankly, I don't think there is anything that we should. News has broken more than once that Lamont Butler will be the starting point guard for this team. Butler said it himself just a few weeks back whenever he was being interviewed by the media. He said he expected to be the starting point guard for the Wildcats. And then Kirk Carissa confirmed it on his socials just a few days ago. Butler will be PG1. Now, some of you in the comments and some people online have continued to push the narrative that, well, these are the players speaking, not the coaches. And I also want to point out at the same time, the coaches have emphasized how important a player-led team is. So what are we really doing here whenever we're pressing that argument? But the point being, Butler is going to start even if some people on the internet don't like it. And I really do think we need to kind of stop and look at the entire picture here. Let's step away from the statistics. Let's step away from the numbers that we saw from last season. And I know a lot of you who don't like this idea are hung up on the simple concept of Butler did not shoot very well last year. Kirk Carissa, the other option at point guard, is one of the nation's best three-point shooters. This system is going to shoot a ton of threes. I think we need to look at it in a different light and maybe have some different statistics to kind of back up Lamont Butler starting at point guard. This is a kid that brought San Diego State to the national championship. He was a key figure during their role, and obviously he hit that buzzer beater against Florida Atlantic to send the Aztecs to that natty against UConn. It's less about the statistics with Lamont Butler and more about the fact that, quite frankly, he just has the it factor. He has that dog in him, as people like to say. He's a very good player. Forget about the numbers. Forget about the fact that he shot just a shade over 30% from three last year. If you want to make an argument about statistics, I think it's just as important to point out the fact that he shot over 34% the season prior, shooting actually, I believe, just a tad more from beyond the arc. So same volume, higher efficiency by about 4% in this system. I think that Kentucky is going to encourage and and ask their players to shoot open threes, to take outside shots. And I think that with the spacing that UK is going to operate with, Butler is going to have an opportunity to increase his efficiency compared to where it was a season ago. It may end up being his best shooting season for all we know. I think that Butler, regardless of statistics, is going to have an opportunity to look like even just an average, competent outside shooter in this Wildcats system. If he can kind of average out to a 33%, that's average in college basketball. That's average, and you don't need much more out of a point guard in a backcourt with two excellent shooters on what may end up being the best shooting team in the SEC. Forget about the numbers. Forget about that. Just watch how this team operates with Butler at point. He's also very much so a capable ball handler. If you go back and watch some of his film from his time at San Diego State, and there's a ton that people have been putting on social media recently, you'll see his ability to drive downhill and score, and not only drive downhill and score, but also drive downhill and kick the ball out for open shots. What are we going to see a lot of in this Mark Pope offense? Driving and kicking for open threes. Lamont Butler is going to be very, very good for this offense from a ball handling perspective, from an ability to drive downhill and score at the rim perspective. He's very physical when it comes to getting down to the cup and laying it in. You get to see that a number of times during San Diego State's various points in the NCAA tournament. It's more effective. He is more effective as a player in transition than I expected, and he will probably be, again, even more effective as an offensive threat given his new surroundings. The final point I want to make here about Lamont Butler is that it's not about the scoring, right? It's not about what can you bring to the table from a points per game perspective. The conversation that we've been having so far this offseason has revolved around Kentucky's got a ton of mouths to feed. How are they going to get every single player their touches? How are they going to keep everyone satisfied? And I mentioned earlier the fact that you've got two really good shooters, and not just really good shooters, the best that college basketball has to offer sitting in your backcourt alongside Butler. He does not even have to be a secondary scoring option. There is Kobe Brea and there is Kerr Carissa right there at your 1 and your 2. Jackson Robinson, who we'll talk about in a second, is also going to take precedent over Lamont Butler. You are not asking this kid to jack up 10 to 15 shots a game. That's just not the way that he operates. He's going to be average to slightly above average when it comes to his efficiency numbers. By the way, 48% for a 6'2" guard from inside the arc is not bad. That's his statistic there from 2-point range, especially with some of his shot selection from beyond the paint and still in the 2-point area. It's really not bad at all. Butler is not a primary scoring option. He will be a good distributor on a team that will distribute the ball very well. He is going to be a good enough shooter to stay out on the floor and be a threat. He is also going to bring the best guard defense that Kentucky has on this team. We saw Kentucky struggle against La Familia and their more physical guards, getting downhill, laying a bunch of things in. Somebody like Butler, who averaged over 1.5 steals per game for 3 straight years, is going to be able to provide that punch, that physicality, that edge, that energy. That's what you need at point guard. You need somebody that can facilitate, play defense, and make the team around him better. And I truly believe with Butler at point guard, he's going to make this team better. This does not mean Kerr Carissa is not going to play. They could end up splitting time for all we know. But I think that the conversation surrounding Lamont Butler needs to start to step away from the statistics, and we need to start having a conversation about his actual role. And I think that we'll find that Butler is not only a serviceable player, but a very clutch and strong one as well. Let's talk here for a little bit about Jackson Robinson. According to one outlet, he could be the best shooting guard in basketball. Are we undervaluing the BYU prospect? We'll talk about it in just a second. Before I do that, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. I love sports. I really do, and I love them so much. I never want the sports to stop. But as we kind of get closer to college football, we're kind of in this dead period right now, and we get fewer games. We only really have the Olympics, women's basketball, Major League Baseball. We're looking for college football. We're looking for the NFL. Some of the things that I personally really enjoy. The sports aren't quite sportsing like we want them to right now, albeit some incredible women's basketball and Olympics going on right now. And FanDuel, regardless of what's going on, lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. That is FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you again. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions whatsoever for the YouTube channel about anything going on with Kentucky football or basketball, I would love to answer it, so leave it in the comments below. All right, we talked about Lamont Butler running Kentucky's offense. Let's talk for a second about Jackson Robinson, how he may be the best shooting guard in all of college basketball, at least according to 24/7 Sports. He is. 24/7 Sports released an article ranking college basketball's best players by position. Isaac Trotter wrote this piece over at 24/7 Sports. Mark Sears at Alabama getting the nod at point guard, at combo guard, the five-star freshman at Rutgers, Dylan Harper. The Scarlet Knights, by the way, going to be very fun to watch this year. Cam Jones is still at Marquette. Extremely high-level scorer. Walter Clayton Jr. at Florida is also a bucket. Wade Taylor at 4. Again, you guys know how I feel about Texas A&M and their efficiencies, and we're going to get into it later. At shooting guard, though, BYU transfer, NBA prospect, Jackson Robinson, ranked as the #1 shooting guard in all of college basketball over some really good players. LJ Cryer at Houston, who makes really tough shots and has incredible defense to boot. Matt Murrell out of Ole Miss, who is another really good shooter. Chris Youngblood at Alabama. Chris Youngblood, a transfer from South Florida. Rylan Griffin at Kansas, who was formerly at Bama, is now going to play wing or shooting guard at Kansas in Lawrence. Also, Ryan Conwell at Xavier and Jaden Atkins at Michigan State, 2 candidates here, according to 24/7 Sports. But Jackson Robinson, the best shooting guard in all of college basketball. Here's what Isaac Trotter had to say about Robinson. He said, quote, "It was a complete no-brainer for Robinson to follow Mark Pope from BYU to Kentucky. The coveted Big 12 Sixth Man of the Year knows the system, can shoot the cover off of the ball, and will sprint the floor in transition for threes against scrambling defenses. Robinson is really good at what he does well. Can he add more creation and rim protection to his repertoire?" And I absolutely think he can. It's actually a conversation that we've had a lot here on the show as the offseason has gone on, that I think that Robinson has proven, although the statistics may not be elite, he has proven to be a 3-level scorer and a very versatile threat. Now, all the conversation that we've heard with Jackson Robinson is his ability to shoot threes, at least this offseason. And I want to remind you guys, the 34.8% that he shot from beyond the arc last year is above average in college basketball. He was not a bad shooter by any means. I don't understand the conversation around some of these guys when it comes to, oh, well, the shooting percentage is this, so therefore they must be bad. You have to watch them. You have to watch their surroundings. 34.8% or the 34 point whatever percent he shot, it was above average. He is an above average shooter. Lamont Butler, just 2 seasons ago, was an above average shooter. People have dips. People have things that don't go their way. They have systems that bog them down. They have spacing that forces them to struggle with their offensive game. Jackson Robinson is probably going to shoot the ever-loving lights out of the basketball this season because of who's surrounding him. It's the exact same thing with Lamont Butler. I think Jackson Robinson, at this point, given what we've heard for this offseason, he may actually be sort of undervalued. Let's start here with the size. You've got Jackson Robinson at 6'7". Again, Big 12 Sixth Man of the Year. Came off the bench for the Cougs, led them in scoring. He was primarily, according to Ken Pom, playing the 4, playing power forward for BYU. He's going to play wing this year, and I would not be surprised if there are rotations and there are parts or there are different lineups that Kentucky wants to throw out there where Robinson's playing the 2. He has the ability to play shooting guard. We have seen it at BYU, and we've seen it during these highlights from practice and from the La Familia scrimmage. Robinson can handle the ball. With the way that Kentucky plays in transition, it doesn't really matter if you're 6'7" or 7'2". If you can handle the ball and make a pass to the corner for a 3, Bob's your uncle. At that point, just put out whoever is the most effective. Doesn't matter whether or not it's shooting guard, point guard, small forward. It does not matter what position, quote unquote, they have. It's just a matter of whether or not they can go out there and execute the way that you want them to. So Jackson Robinson at 6'7" can absolutely play shooting guard, but it also allows him, if he does want to play that high, it allows him to, with his height, to essentially on the other side of the floor, match up with anybody that an opposing team wants to throw at UK. There were so many different times last year where Kentucky just simply lacked the physicality to defend a shot that could have been defended better by a more physical or even taller player. Kentucky had 3 7-footers on their roster, and all of them were built like a sheet of paper. They could not stop a nosebleed. They could not stop a gust of wind. Kentucky's guards, at times, were very similar. This year, there's a little bit more bulk. There's a little bit more strength. Somebody like Robinson at 6'7" is going to be able to provide you a little bit more punch if you want to line him up against a 2 or even a more lanky-bodied 3. He's got the ability to defend. He's got the ability to be a mismatch issue on offense. He's got the ability to shoot the lights out. I think, on top of all of this, he has the ability to be a leader for this team. Kentucky, as we have said time and time and time again this offseason, they don't have a star, so to speak. 14.2 points per game for Robinson last year is good, but it's not star-worthy. Kentucky doesn't have that top-tier guy. They've got a bunch of second-tier guys, right? That's what we said. I'm beginning to kind of work my way around to the thought that Robinson is a top-tier guy. He is a leader. He is somebody that can carry the load statistically on offense. I think you may see Robinson have an extremely good year, maybe a better year than we currently anticipate. And he finds himself going higher than we all think in the first round of the NBA draft. The NBA likes size, they like spacing, they like shooting, they like defense. Robinson can provide all of those different things. So I like this. I think that Jackson Robinson is the best shooting guard in college basketball, and I'd be willing to say that he right now should be considered a potential SEC Player of the Year candidate. I think he's right up there with some of the best that this conference has to offer. I think he's going to shock some folks. Even Matt Jones, who is finally back with KSR, one of the first things that he said when he was back is, hey, Robinson's been shooting the lights out. This kid's going to be better than we think. I completely agree. All right, to wrap up the show, we've got nightly numbers here in just a second. I'm really excited to dive into this new segment that I've got. Got a statistic here for you. Some of you may not like it. Personally, I am shocked by it. And that's not me just trying to tease the conversation. I'm dead serious. I do not understand it at all. Before we get into that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash with all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. You can keep your ride or die alive over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, wrapping up the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, we've got a very fun new segment here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're going to try and do this every single episode to wrap up the show. We've got Nightly Numbers, the show within the show where we talk about one interesting Kentucky Wildcat statistic. And the number today, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll please, is the number 9. No, we're not talking about titles, although this team currently certainly is talking about chasing that 9th national championship. I'm talking about number 9 in the SEC. John Rothstein of CBS Sports has released his SEC basketball predictions. And yes, this may shock you, it shocked me. John Rothstein predicts the Kentucky Wildcats to finish 9th in the SEC. Number 9 out of 16 teams. This is wild to me for a couple of reasons that we'll get into with some of the other things that Rothstein also predicts for this conference. But the nightly number 9 in the SEC. This is insane. And when you start to look at the rankings here, you really start to get sort of confused. Here are some of the bullet points that I wrote down just looking at this article that Rothstein put out. Arkansas and Texas A&M are in the top 4 of the SEC. He predicts Arkansas and John Calipari to finish 2nd. Texas A&M, he projects to finish 4th. Both those teams getting double byes. In no world where I am in charge of predicting the SEC's finish are Arkansas and Texas A&M both getting double byes. Maybe one of them. Maybe. Not a chance. Both of them do. Auburn behind Arkansas right now is bonkers. Auburn is one of the most experienced teams in the SEC. They bring back a ton of production. Statistically, they were one of the most dominant teams on both sides of the ball last year. They ran through SEC play. There is not a chance that this group that Arkansas has put together on paper is better than the Auburn Tigers right now. And they sure as crap, they are not better than the Alabama Crimson Tide either. Frankly, I think both of them getting double byes is just, I wanted to stop there, but I knew we had to talk about this today. So you may say, okay, well, who else? Who else does John Rothstein have kind of out of place? So he has Alabama number 1, Arkansas number 2, Auburn number 3, Texas A&M at number 4. He's got the Florida Gators at number 5 over Tennessee, who he has finishing 6th. 6th for the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, I'm all for some Tennessee hate, right? I'm all for saying, you know what? That backcourt's not as good as we currently think, or some people currently think it is. Zakai Ziegler is not that great of a point guard offensively. Jemai Meshack is unproven as a volume scorer. Chaz Lanier, can he play defense? What does their center position look like now that Jonas Adu is gone? Blah, 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 blah. We could get into it. We could dive into it here with Tennessee. But there's still a stacked roster. It's a very good team. And they have them behind Florida. Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, Will Richard, Alex Condon. There is some really, really, really solid names here. Not to mention some solid newcomers. I mean, Elijah Martin from FAU is really, really good, and he's going to be great at the 2 for the Gators. And I personally, I like Florida being this high, but to put them over the Vols, I wouldn't have done it. That's not what I would have predicted, and I'm sure that a lot of people would feel the same way. Maybe not some people wearing blue and white in the state of Kentucky, but it is what it is. Also, you've got Texas at number 7. You have Mississippi State, who I think is one of the most slept-on programs in all of college basketball and one of the most slept-on programs in the SEC this year. He's got them 10th. He's got them 10th behind, and Ole Miss at number 8, by the way, which I don't have a problem with that. Ole Miss at number 8. Georgia, according to John Rothstein, is the preseason sleeper in this conference. Gentlemen, when is the last time that Georgia, the basketball program, did anything relevant? Anything. It's been forever. Mike White may be the most unsalted butter, bland, pretzel crisp coach that you could conjure in your mind. There is nothing going on here. Even if they look on paper like, hey, they may be good here, hey, they may be pretty good here. It is a 20-11, 19-12 type of season. It does not matter what they have on paper. This is not going to be a team that I wake up on. Mike White tucks me in comfortably and kisses me goodnight with this team. I am sleeping, and the rest of America should too. I will eat those words if Georgia ends up being a top half team in this league. I do not see it for them to be the sleeper over Kentucky, the Kentucky Wildcats, the most prestigious college basketball program, period. Put them 9th, and they're not the sleeper? I don't know. And then this is the final part here that really gets me. This is the kicker. He has 5, count them, 5 Wildcats as impact players in the SEC, 4 of which are starters, and according to some of us, Kirk Carissa is going to be a starter. But 5 of his impact players, I do not understand this. I do not understand this at all. And they're 9th. They're 9th with 5 impact players. I don't get it. Also, fun fact here, under the radar SEC transfers, you've got Lamont Butler. So you've got their starting 5 and their 6th man as under the radar, impactful, important. You've got their entire freaking starting 5 here as important, and they're 9th. 9th behind Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Texas, the Longhorns. But by the way, just to give you, you guys may be saying, what would your rankings be right now? Here's how I do it. Alabama, Auburn, screw it. I think Kentucky's going to be good this year. I put them 3. Call me biased, call me a homer, I don't care. Kentucky at 3. I'd put Tennessee at 4, Florida at 5, Ole Miss at 6, Texas A&M at 7, Mississippi State at 8. Those two are interchangeable. Texas at 9, South Carolina at 10, Georgia at 11, Oklahoma at 12, LSU at 13, Missouri at 14. Actually, I miscounted here, but you get the point. Oklahoma, LSU, Missouri, Vanderbilt. That's how it rounds out. Auburn, Kentucky, Bama, Tennessee, those are your top 4 seeds. Florida, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, that's kind of middle of the pack. Starts to die off when you get to Texas. I don't think South Carolina's going to be that great. I think they're going to be better than Georgia, though, just because of how good Lamont Paris has been as a coach. Oklahoma, mid. LSU could honestly be better than the Sooners. Who knows? And Missouri and Vanderbilt, the bottom of the barrel in this conference. So I hate this. Frankly, I hate this. And on top of all of this, I'm not going to go through the spiel again. Not going to do it today. We can talk about Arkansas another time, but Texas A&M It's the same thing that happened last year. It's the exact same thing. They got hyped. They got hyped up. People got excited. They said, hey, look, all of these guys that scored and rebounded really well are back. They should be good. Top 10 team preseason. And then they sucked. Like that, there's no other way to pull it. It took them getting really hot at the end of the year and just kind of pulling it out at the end to make it look like they were semi-competent. No, we're not going to get into it again today, but no. So that's your nightly number here. Appreciate it. It's the show within the show where we talk about one interesting statistic with the Kentucky Wildcats that's going up as a clip later at midnight on the Locked On Kentucky YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for watching today. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I'll see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.